Hey everyone, welcome back to your favorite sales podcast. I'm your host, Ross Rich, and today we have a very special guest. We have Jen Igartua, who is from Go Nimbly. She founded the agency and company, and we're doing things a bit different today. Usually, as you know, we have revenue leaders and sales leaders, not that Jen isn't, but I think this would be interesting to get a larger sample size of her working with, dozens, potentially hundreds of those folks and getting her perspective on how to drive excellence in execution in the revenue world. So thank you so much for taking the time at the beginning of the year to join us, Jen.
Totally. And I do sell. So I'm not pretending this whole time. I'm the primary seller at Go Nimbly, so you can trust me.
As any great leader, I think, and CEO of a company, you always got a ABC, right?
That's
Always
right.
be closing. Amazing. Well, before we jump into your three tips and strategies for driving execution excellence, maybe so the audience gets to know you a little bit and kind of how and why you got started with Go Nimbly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a big question. Um, well, I'll start a little kind of like personal. So I grew up in Spain. I lived in Madrid for 10 years. My dad's Spanish, my mom's American. And my dad actually started a business in Spain.
Mm,
He's an engineer, irrigation engineer, and it was a very kind of going on site, building irrigation systems at golf courses and gardens and things like that. And the reason we live in the US is because his business went to shit. We owed a bunch of money. The house got taken, like the kind of rags to rich or riches to rags, I suppose, kind of story. And we moved to the US. And I think it's funny when I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug, like I clearly had it from my dad. It definitely got
mhm,
taken from him. Like he never started another business.
mhm,
It was also 1997. The whole world was crashing. Like there was a lot of things out of his hands. And I started to get the entrepreneurial bug pretty early. So, had a leaf blowing business, like, as soon as I could sell a bag for $5. I had a jewelry business that I had in kind of high school and college where I kind of made jewelry and sold it to all these little stores. I started
mhm,
clubs in college. I started improv teams and then started Go Nimbly. Before that was a little glorified contracting on the way up, and started a game company called Pillbox Games. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I even gave myself I guess, permission to call myself an entrepreneur. It felt very male to me. It felt like I
mm.
had to, I don't know, start eBay from my garage in order to be able to call myself that. But I've started to kind of really own it. And also shed a little bit. Like my dad had a lot of fear in me starting a business. I had to like
Mm.
really explain to him, I'm just buying a laptop. Like, this isn't, I don't have to buy a bunch of equipment and
Go
it,
into debt or something. Yeah.
no, I've got my laptop, I've got my time. And that's really how I started. So like career wise, I started a company called Blue Wolf. And if people have been in the kind of Salesforce ecosystem space, Blue Wolf was the first big partner of Salesforce.
Mm.
The CEO, Eric Barrage, knew Benioff back in their Oracle days and, rode that wave, which is like such great timing. They got bought by IBM, and I was the first marketing automation hire
Mm.
in a, kind of hundreds of people that are very focused on sales and sales process. So it gave me a really incredible crash course in what it means to be working basically top of funnel for everybody that's kind of they don't really care up until you get lead. And so it was a lot of how do I get this other side to be listening to us and caring, realizing that anything I did in at that time was like Eloqua, Marketo, and HubSpot. Anything I
Mm.
did in those systems didn't matter unless I was aligned with the folks that were owning Salesforce. And it was a lot about me learning about silo breaking and also realizing like how can marketing and sales that are really so aligned in their outcomes have
Yeah.
so much friction, and why aren't we mad at finance? They're the ones not giving us budget. And so like that got me, I was very obsessed with that. So I got like very into sales and marketing alignment, did a bunch of workshops and work around that. And then fast forward, I was a consultant, I was getting billed at a lot of money. I was getting, a little bit, I guess, feeling like I didn't have enough opportunity. In retrospect, I wasn't ready, but that's not how I
Mm.
felt. In retrospect, if anyone from Blue Wolf is listening, you were right. I was not ready for the next position, but I didn't think that. And so I went off and, started contracting on my own.
Mhm.
My first client was Twilio.
It's not a bad
Which
first customer.
why I okay, hopefully they're not listening. But I didn't know who they were.
When was
And
this? Were they like
oh
yet
my
a
gosh,
big company or?
2014, 15 kind of time
Okay,
frame.
so they were still
Hundreds.
on the come up.
But people knew them. I just like it was I was definitely like, oh, text messaging, awesome. And I just did not get the like how large of a company they were or they will be. I was really
Mm.
focused on getting their lead to meeting process really streamlined. They were
Mhm.
like missing MQLs. And so like I had a little contract with them for 3 months. And my thought was, well, I'm making more money than I was before. And Blue Wolf said I could come back if it didn't work out. No risk. And then from there, my second client was Zendesk. They're both still with us today. Just there's
Amazing.
names that I can't mention, but like big AI company that we all know and love is a client. Intercom is a client. Like I've got these like really incredible companies that we all look up to. Uh,
Mhm.
and I have Twilio for sure to thank because that brand has taken me a long
Give you
way.
your first shot. Yeah, it's
Yeah, they
amazing. It
really
always
did.
starts
Yeah,
with something, right?
100%.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, usually ask what the hardest part of running revenue teams are. What's been the
Yeah.
hardest part of your transition from, contractor and kind of IC to running this business?
Ooh, there's so many things that have been hard. If any, I think I started this business in my, kind of mid 20s.
Mhm.
There's so many things that kind of I regret in my leadership style, how I grew teams. I was definitely like very controlling, didn't know how to delegate. Like delegation is such a senior skill set, and we don't really like train people to delegate well. And so there's like a lot of kind of growth, for sure on that side. It's funny you mentioned like not as a revenue leader, but I am that. Like I really do play the go-to-market motion at Go Nimbly.
Mm.
I started running our delivery team. So I was definitely running like staffing and client escalations, which there are not many. We're great. And like figuring out hiring and
Yeah.
sometimes firing and all that and building a team. And frankly, it's a never ending problem. And I was getting very, very
Yes.
burnt out by it. And
Mm.
my business partner, Troy, was like, we swapped roles and we didn't realize like how much that unlocked like so much potential for Go Nimbly because I'm so much more motivated by the kind of sales and marketing part
Mm.
of the business.
Then
And it's
delivery.
funny, I actually do, you asked the question, what's been hard? And I am having a hard time right now balancing these two functions that are so different. And we do tell CROs they should care about marketing and sales, but marketing orchestration is frankly very tactical, very in the weeds, a lot of tiny tasks have to
Mhm.
happen to get things and the motions are so wildly different from like, hey, we need to get the website into a good place, we need to create content, to events, to lead flow, to it's just a lot of tiny things that take a lot of specialty. And then like on sales, like balancing this kind of long term versus short term of like, the intensity of deals and like spike in work. And honestly, it's a little bit of staffing too, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And like that is something that I'm like trying to build two very different teams. That when I wasn't really in it, I would look at it like, well, it's all lead flow and like
Go to
just,
market. Yeah,
just
generally. Yeah.
put it all together.
Mhm.
And now being in it, it is very difficult to balance both teams.
Yeah. No, that's a really good call out and point. I think I've seen sometimes leaders who are really great in one get the
Yeah,
responsibility from a CEO or a senior leader, like, hey, you should take on this other thing.
right.
And without that industry expertise, especially a larger team or someone that needs to run really fast, it's really hard
It's very difficult.
to
Yeah.
nail it when you don't have that kind of
Yeah.
background and context that they're very, very different. Even
Yeah.
if it's like revenue generating stuff, like still like taking a post sales leader and putting them
Totally.
in sales or vice versa or marketing, it's not as
Yeah.
interchangeable as I think some people think.
Yeah. There are like, I think there is the kind of leader that is great at building teams.
Yeah.
That if you put them in a position to be able to have the budget and the ability to hire the right people and build a team, they can do both, right? They get the right people in marketing and the right people in sales and they oversee that. And I think they can do that. But asking somebody to be both like leader and IC of both. So it's like you're not only asking them to run a sales team and make sure that we have essentially the right playbooks and the right selling strategy and all that, and also come up with like your positioning and your content pillars and the way that you market. I'm sure those people exist, but it's rare it's the same person.
Totally, totally. Well, shifting gears a bit, good segue to kind of the three things that we're going to talk a bit about. The first one being marketers having to set the sales team up, and this kind of goes back to your alignment point and learnings for peak
Yeah.
customer moments. What does that mean to you, and why is that kind of number one on your list?
Yeah, I use this language. There's this book. Oh my gosh, I think it's called The Power of Moments or something like that. It is a book that talks about Disney and the experience that they have in their parks. And basically, what it says is you can have highs and lows, but people are going to remember the peaks.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult to get a 2 to become a 7. It's very easy to get a 7 to become a 9. And so it's like, how do you create more of these peak moments where you gain a lot of trust and you create a lot of, yeah, just a great moment for your customer. And you can think about that. People in marketing think about that all the time, right? Like, what do we do at an event to like create this like big moment? We don't think about that in the kind of sales process. And frankly, there is this like one moment right at lead handoff that we are just like atrocious at. I also think at post, like right when you sell, there's a lot of like, oh, don't worry, in 2 weeks, your onboarding rep will reach out. And it's like, well, you just signed a contract. They're really excited. And now you're going like, yeah, we'll get back to you.
Mhm.
And so we have these places where it's very easy to create a 10, and we kind of miss that. And I think one of them is really around that lead handoff piece. And I've said this a few times where we're doing a disservice to our sales reps. We are basically sending a lead over and saying, I don't know, lead source webinar, score 47, go at it. All the information's in the CRM, just like look at it and go have a great call. And a lot of
Mhm.
times it's like early SDRs, couple years experience, and they're supposed to pick up the phone call and be like, Ross, let's learn about your business. And instead they're calling you and I don't know, trying to do some BANT criteria and like half know who you are. And they're also not excited because they're like, oh, what did he do? And the thing is, we have all of this information at our fingertips. Like we have every interaction they've had. We have the ability to scrape their LinkedIn. We have their ability to bring multiple sources, understand them, understand their business. You can even, through like tools like Clay, you could even go, if they're a public company, go look at like their last, oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? Earnings summary, and like bring it back and summarize that and give that to the rep so that they can pick up the phone call and say, oh wow, you 2x last year, that must mean you're dealing with X, Y, and Z. So we have all this, and we're just not giving the sales reps the why of a handoff. We're just saying, oh, you wanted 50, here's 51, we did our job.
Mm.
Instead of saying, here's this person, here's why they need a conversation, and here's the playbook that we recommend. And I think that's like the good to great there is so like, it's just like a massive step that people aren't taking.
Got it. So you're basically saying marketers maybe looking at it in terms of the number instead of the quality of setting up that, because you always think about KPIs, and why do you think that is the case, that we miss so much of the context?
Yeah.
Is it they don't understand the value of it, or
No, I think marketers understand the value of it. I think there's definitely the pressure. So like there's definitely the pressure. KPIs definitely influence this. And volume is important. Like you got to feed a sales team. And if I just hired X number of SDRs and I need them to make X number of calls, they have incentives on that. It all kind of rolls back into the pressure that you're going to get. And
yeah?
so I've implemented more lead scoring programs than I feel like it's my nemesis. I like don't want to implement another one in my entire life. But the idea is good. The idea has merit, which is we are going to understand our customer, understand when they want to be reached out to, and we're only going to reach out to people that we want to do business with. We're going to score them algorithmically, and it's going to be beautiful, and we're going to know this is the right time. Unfortunately, our algorithm says that there's 10 leads and I need to send you 100. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to try to market to those 90 for the next 3 months and try to get them to create? No, I'm going to lower the threshold from 100 to 72, and you're going to get people that aren't quite ready. And I don't know if there's really any business that has the patience to not do that, to let people with salaries sit, maybe do outbound and say the inbound's not ready
Goals
and
are
try to
still
do.
goals. Yeah.
And, I don't think anybody's at fault for that. But imagine a world where maybe we're sending people that aren't quite ready. I think that there is, At its worst case, a laziness, which I don't think most people are lazy. At its best case, just like a gap in knowledge, where it does feel a little overwhelming, but the tools exist for you to normalize your data, automate some of the research, and at a minimum, get somebody a lead that doesn't just say lead source webinar, but says, I don't know, Jen works at Go Nimbly. She's very active on LinkedIn. Her business, doubled over the last year. She's in this, industry. These are her top competitors. She used to work at Blue Wolf. In the news, she's been at these 3 like conferences, whatever. And also she engaged with these 3 pieces of content, showing us that she's probably interested in product X. If you're even very good, you could say, looking at her LinkedIn post, her style is, very casual, but direct, whatever, done. Like that, everyone has access to. Now, some paragraphs will be really long because you have a lot of information. Some paragraphs might just be, hey, here's high level the information I have about the business. But it is, at this point, it's table stakes. And if you're not doing that, your competitors are on it. And we need to arm our reps with the ability to have a great first call. And right now, if nothing more, you're losing money because you're either your SDR or AE, depending on your model, is not doing this research and getting on the phone and having a fine phone call, or they are, and it's taking them half an hour to prep. And so they're doing, half the number of calls that they could be. So it's really anchored in go-to-market efficiency, which both sales and marketing should care about. And the pressure probably needs to come from sales and saying, hey, this is what we need. This is good. This is like what good looks like. And you're giving us a lead alert.
Totally. No, it's helpful context. And yeah, I think you get so caught up in the numbers, like you're saying, and, needing to hit these things. And sometimes, thinking more deeply of like, how much does that matter versus the quality and conversion could be a smaller number for converting higher. So that makes a ton of sense. Well, shifting gears away from kind of that sales marketing handoff to next piece, which I think is like more cultural around language matters, aligning your teams, whether it's, quantifiable things, definitions of data or just words. What does that mean to you, and why is it so important?
Yeah. One of the things that, if you think about revenue operations and like why it started, it's like, this is a dumb little marketing exercise, but like, what is our villain, right? Like, what's our villain as operators? What's the thing that's really hurting us? And it's silos, right? Like if I had to create a little storybook about it, I'd be like, that's what we're fighting. And there's silos. A lot of people think about people silos, but there's a lot of different kinds. There's technical silos, there's integration silos, there's data silos, like as simple as, you have access to something and somebody else doesn't. So like they can make different decisions from it. And if you can work, there's some like very, very easy things you can do to align your business very quickly. And one of those things is basically to streamline kind of definitions and data points that are so core. And I'm not asking you to go like revamp your entire data architecture so that you have the cleanest data ever. Spoiler alert, no one has it. We're working with really incredible companies. They don't have it. It's very difficult. There's dirty data everywhere. But the companies that like the impact that we've seen in, go find those 10 data points that you really care about and get those super crisp and normalized across your business. And you will see so much more alignment, across the board. And I'm talking like, all right, go with the easiest demographic data on your accounts, number of employees, industry, location, whatever is very important to you. Usually it comes down to the same 5, but get those normalized. And I'm not talking get Zoom info in there and get a Zoom info field and bring it in. I'm talking one field that the entire business uses for industry. And that means that marketing automation is using the same field. That means your sales force is using the same field. That means your CS team, that means your product team isn't collecting their own field, because that means like at the end of the quarter, when everybody comes up with their, graphics and the industry values are different in product than in sales, C-level is going, wait, what? I thought we weren't doing well in aerospace. Well, we're calling it, I can't think of another word for aerospace, but we're calling it planes. And like just bringing that alignment on core data points is huge. Bring that down to like the person level. You can do that with title and role into like, what's their function and what's their level. And if you can get those kind of core data points across the board, the amount of impact that has on lead routing, and scoring and handoff and personalization and reporting, it really starts to align that. take that same concept on stages, or where is a lead? What do we, I mean, even the word lead, what do we call a lead? Is it a lead object in Salesforce? Does a lead mean someone that just came in? Is it someone that's ready for sales? If you can get that language across the board really consistent, it just goes a long way in every meeting, every report out, all these things, in getting your team speaking the same language.
And why do you think it's such a common problem, right? Like it seems so obvious, it seems
Mhm.
so easy. What do you think is stopping people from that happening organically?
I think there's two things. I think one, it's just not fun. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's like, it's grunt work. And it never ends. You can clean it. Like, you have to keep doing it. It's that sort of like the world wants to move into chaos principle. Your data
Yeah.
wants to be dirty. And so like, it's like a never ending problem. And it is not quick. It's not a quick win. Like, you have to take the time to really do this. So I think there's that piece. And I think the other one is, it's the same sort of thing. I don't know what it is about humans. It's like, we can believe something is true and still not do it. It's the same thing with
Mm,
project management. We all know that if we did the gathering requirements and really took the time to do it really well, that the project is that much more successful and ultimately faster, even though we
yeah.
didn't get started for 6 weeks. We all know that. When I tell you it's the hardest thing to sell, even though my customer knows that that's true, it's like, yeah, but we want to see him, like, we want to see the build start sooner. I think it's a bit of that too, where it's like, we all know that normalizing these values would help us, but also we just want to do the thing.
Yeah.
We want to do this other project that feels like the work. This doesn't feel like impactful work, even though that is.
Yeah, it's a bit of just human psychology behind it. Some of
Yeah.
the slow down to speed up stuff feels so uncomfortable. And then when
Yeah.
you do it, you're like, oh shit, I wish I was doing this more often, but it's hard
Yeah.
to find that space and time, right?
I will say it is, I'll say this is a thing that changed over last year, and I think AI has a huge part in it, is we used to pitch data cleanliness projects all the time, and most of the time you get half the budget that you were hoping for, or you don't do it and you do something else. Um, we are getting more and more emphasis on data architecture and data cleanliness, because I think even senior leadership is going, well, we can't do anything interesting without it. We can put AI bots on top of dirty data and it's going to give us bad insights. And so I'm finding we're doing, just like volume wise, a lot more work around
Mm.
data integrity than we were, say, 2 years ago.
Totally. I mean, a lot of people, when I'm going to conferences or hearing talks, they're saying that you can't get the impact of their investments around AI unless you
Right.
have that kind of foundational stuff.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our last point here. Good segue. Um, to how do you think about getting the right information and data, and what does that mean for the business now? Because yes, it definitely seems like it's more top of mind across revenue
Yeah.
operations and just senior leadership.
Yeah, and I don't know if folks are listening to this and they're early, like say a Series A or B, and you've got maybe an operator or like a part-time operator, and you're not investing that much in it. I know it's counterintuitive. I run a company that like does operations, and I do believe in doing that as early as you can. That said, if you're trying to find product market fit, you're pivoting a ton, things are changing, your product's changing, it's actually very difficult to create a good infrastructure, because you're going to change. And why would I spend a bunch of money when I know I'm going to pivot? And in that case, hack it. Don't tell anyone
Yeah.
I told you, but build in production, whatever. Like, it's just not worth the amount of effort and time that it takes to do things in a very intentional way. That said, there's a couple of areas that like you really need to nail. And I would say your opportunity infrastructure, it's such a pain in the ass to clean up. It makes me a lot of money that people do it wrong. But just making sure that you have a way of tracking a sales cycle and your revenue in a way that's reportable and consistent. So getting your start and end dates, really clean, making sure you have new business versus renewal versus upsell in a really kind of it's an opportunity record type if you're in Salesforce, but like getting that infrastructure in a really good place, tracking products, making sure that close dates are consistent, like all of that basically gives you a data set and a structure where you can build on top of and automate. And then I would say the second part is your lead to meeting process. Like, are leads coming in? Are they getting tagged and scored and handed off in a way that is like very easy I mean, you're going to lose money if you don't do that piece. But that is like an area where the best practices is well known, and you're probably not going to deviate that much from it. You're still routing, handing off, asking for activity tracking and all that. So those two areas I think are very important. And if you are at a place where you are getting to a more mature place where you want to use product data in marketing or even in sales, or you have a free trial flow or free sign up flow, all that kind of stuff. Really thinking about how you structure product data in your CRM and for your sales team. We've undone a lot of, okay, they added 18 fields on the account for last login, number of logins, who logged in, whatever else. And pulling that either into a custom object or being really thoughtful about that. I think like those three places are worth investing in early. The rest of it, just go for it, go build it, go, retry it. But those are so core to your go-to-market motion.
And more out of just personal curiosity, because I hear about this all the time, the trade-off between not just how you're architecting it, but the different tools that you have to start. What do you think are the need to haves? Let's say you're before 20 sellers, 15 sellers, you're not necessarily a huge team. Maybe there's like a head of sales, a couple of managers. What do you think the need to haves at that stage are versus the, 100 plus, 200 plus sellers?
What sucks about, I guess, money and price is like the best thing for somebody to do early in their cycle is to do a consolidation play and buy kind of the big tools that can do it all, because it's less integrations, it's less enablement, it's like just less.
That work just takes up so much time. But yeah, we started with Salesforce and actually moved to HubSpot because of how much effort, like you're talking about, it 100%. Took not just the price of the tool, but the effort in between and the pace you could move at is just totally different.
100%. So, if you have all the money in the world, then you could do like a HubSpot or a Salesforce, and then you can get yourself like a Gong, because that can do sequencing plus call recording plus forecasting. But like early stage, it's expensive. So you end up with 3 different tools that are like more point solutions, which are actually more work internally to integrate and get going. So it's like such a trade-off and such a tough place to be in. I would like definitely get myself, HubSpot can do it too, but like a marketing automation kind of core. How are you catching leads? How are you I think routing is another one that I would do early. At 20 sellers, you need a routing tool. Do not try to build it yourself. It's just like not worth it. You can't, the moment you try to do interesting things like someone's on vacation, I want to turn it on and off. Like you're now building a product that you don't need to be building. They're cheap enough. You can do a Chili Piper or a lean data or a distribution engine and get that routing into place. And then, there's it's such a slippery slope. I want to like add 100 things. And you get into kind of the reporting piece. I don't know if at 20 sellers, I'm asking you to pull everything into a Snowflake, et cetera. You're probably just going to be dealing with like the toughness that is any CRM reporting tool. Don't be afraid of connectors into Excel. I'm like saying the opposite of what I tell my clients, but I work with mid-market and above. So like, I don't work in this kind of early stage. And then I'm having a lot of fun with Clay. It's definitely like the hot girl at the prom right now. So like, they're still early, but they're moving more enterprise, and the orchestration that you can do there, especially if you're a PLG company wanting to do different plays, normalize data, bring lots of different sources together. I do find that like we're in a movement now where when I started consulting, which is, I've hit 15 years. And we really started out saying everything has to be CRM. Everything in Salesforce, we would be like, no swivel chair, no other tools, just bring everything here, keep the customer, keep the rep in Salesforce. And everything normalized into data points. So like, how do you normalize everything into like one data point that you can report on? And that's like all we did was like everything in there. And then we started to like move the other way and say, actually, there's these other tools that they can work better in. And also send them a paragraph. It's okay, they can read. It actually lets them digest the information a bit better. So we need it in 2 places. And I think we're doing this thing where we're pulling away a little bit. And we did that during COVID for sure. We bought every tool under the sun, and we're kind of coming back a little. And we're saying, okay, we have tool fatigue. Can we consolidate and do less? So when we talk about like the perfect stack, I think early it's like less is more. Even if you're spending more on one, tool that you're like, I'm going to grow into, it's going to take time. The administering of 3, 4, 5 point solutions is going to kill your reps.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. Because I don't, I think it's hard sometimes for like the finance stakeholders to understand the in-between work, and they look at the price tag,
Mhm.
not the total
Totally.
cost of ownership, and the
Yeah.
frustration. Maybe you need another person that's an add-in. How much is that going to cost fully loaded?
Right.
And then the time to coordinate with another person instead of just
Yeah.
having one more senior RevOps leader be able to manage one or two
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah. And it's
that's an
so
interesting perspective.
easy. It's so easy to underscope that stuff or to be like, is it really going to take $20,000 to implement? I'm sure we could do it for less. Or like, that's not that hard. And you under invest and then there's no adoption. And again, it's that same thing that like we all know it, but for some reason we like keep putting pressure on it.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And another interesting point around before it was, not just source of truth, but where you lived was the CRM. And then
Yeah.
you're right. I think people are now looking at that as the data source.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
a
you live
very
in these,
expensive data warehouse.
yes. And
Yeah.
then you're living and then you're trying to find one or two places. And I think everyone's claiming to be
Yeah.
and trying to build the place. And they're building iframes and other tools, and they're trying to be the place to do all the work. And
Yeah.
I just don't think you can do that after building a product for 5, 7, 10, 15 years now to be like, oh, this is the movement in the market. Now we're that.
Right.
And there's a difference between marketing that and that being where what people want and having a product that
Yeah.
really does that. And that's what I've seen is like this dissonance in the market of
Totally.
people pitching that and be like, that doesn't make sense. Like an AE isn't living in, I don't know, I don't want to, throw anyone under the bus, but like, what I'm talking about, right? These big platforms, like
Yeah.
it just, that's where you can do one or two things, but then there's other
Right.
places that you need to go. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that all shakes out over the next few years.
Yeah. And look, disruption will happen. I don't think Salesforce is going anywhere. I think they're very good at disrupting themselves. And so, I feel like maybe that stuff just changes. Like there's a lot of investment in like automation of data collection. So I'll use Gong as an example. I know they're coming out with some features. Maybe they're public, maybe they're not. I don't know if I know things early or not. We're partners with them. I can't remember if this is public, but basically through call recordings, being able to, as you listen, fill out fields automatically.
Yeah.
And that stuff still goes into CRM, but we're basically not asking.
Yes. So the front end of it, exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly. And
Yeah.
everyone's trying to find ways to obfuscate
Right.
that time and energy, which makes sense as value from a seller.
Sure.
But then what's the right place to just live in? And is that
Yeah.
almost an overpromise because there's other
Totally.
places you still need to go? So
Yeah, and your marketing team isn't going into Gong to look at opportunities and like look at how marketing affected those. I don't know, maybe the world changes enough where they do one day, but they're still going into Salesforce.
Yep.
And so we still need to make sure that that's in a place where not only marketing and sales, but like product teams should be able to go in there and CS teams need to go look at pipeline. And so there's still this, I think it's going to be hard to replace, but
I
I've
totally
been wrong
agree.
before.
Well, I could jam on this for hours, but I know you got a busy day and company to run. But really appreciate, Jen, you taking the time to nerd out on all this stuff and share some of your perspectives with the audience here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And a wrap. Awesome.